Keep Right with Ralph K. Ginorio. Why we no longer win wars. In recent weeks, talk of a double tap attack against a Venezuelan drug boat has revealed something disturbing about our contemporary military leadership. This, in conjunction with the seditious Democrat call for troops to disobey unspecified, unlawful orders, shows the effects of an unfettered legalism. Military lawyers cannot any longer be permitted to control our military. Ward Carroll, a former naval aviator who usually does a very respectable job of explaining the military on his YouTube page, went into extreme detail to criticize Secretary of War Pete Hegseth in, quote, Hegseth throws SEAL Admiral under the bus for double tap, unquote. Carroll cites expert combat veterans who criticize Hegseth's alleged order to, quote, kill them all, unquote. Now, subsequent evidence indicates that they are reacting to a false narrative. Still, their objections clarify a flawed mindset. The heart of their complaint is that a couple of survivors seem to still live after the first strike that destroyed their drug smuggling fast boat. Instead of sending in a second missile, which we actually did, these veteran experts would have us employ restraint. They might even have preferred it if we had rescued those survivors and given them their day in court in the United States. Now, these veterans have earned real legitimacy in opining about how battles should be conducted by their repeated willing service in combat. I cannot deny that any expert brought in by Carroll, as well as Carroll himself, understands more about such matters than my civilian self can ever hope to learn. If anyone has earned the right to offer opinions about such matters, it is men such as this. However, they all seem prey to a mindset which guides everything that they assert. The mindset prioritizes that laws of war must be observed as a first principle, and that a top priority of every commander should be to avoid committing war crimes. On first blush, this adherence to lawful restraint seems reasonable. We would not want a repetition of the My Lai massacre. We would certainly not wish to transform wholesome American volunteer citizen soldiers into some latter-day Schutzstaffel. Our forces, they assert, must be seen to be scrupulous adherents to the so-called laws of armed conflict, international humanitarian law in war, as described in a book by Gary D. Solis. No one must be permitted to question our adherence to this theoretical standard of restraint, they say. They go on to describe a functional military command center staffed to the brim with lawyers tasked with ensuring U.S. compliance with these laws of war. Before orders are sent, they must be vetted by these legal experts to ensure their compliance to these laws. This is madness. It comes from us, not having faced a peer adversary since around 1990. It has become unquestioned policy because we haven't had to fight for our very existence in a general war since 1945. Such adherence to the notions of international, largely Western European theorists have crept into our decision-making like gangrene through what had been once healthy flesh. Western European social democracy, as well as its pretensions to establish a, quote, rules-based international order, unquote, was born under the shield that the U.S. provided against Soviet aggression. Many Europeans actually have come to believe that such an international order is both natural and inevitable. They judge American warfare harshly, even as they shelter behind American forces in the NATO alliance. They have become like teenagers who possess no real-life experience, who are utterly dependent upon their parents, and who find fault with everything that their parents do. They do not have valid points of view. I have seen this same legalism in newer generations of police officers and corrections officers. They have been indoctrinated to believe that the laws that govern their profession are a higher priority than their profession's actual purpose. For generations, increasing proportions of our protectors have had their instinctive vocation twisted to conform to the dreams of theorists, as interpreted in courts of law. The detailed rules-mongering hamstrings the effects of all these protectors to save society from enemies both foreign and domestic. It is not the primary job of gendarmes and soldiers to embody some theoretical standard of humanitarian perfection. It is certainly not their job to kowtow before international bodies that arrogate unto themselves the right to judge all others. The job of our protectors is to triumph over enemies, both from outside and within the United States. For our military in particular, this triumph will need to involve aggression, creativity, spontaneity, and a willingness to escalate, to achieve success. None of this can happen when lawyers interfere, scolding line officers to conduct themselves as if they were in a criminal court of law. Battle is self-evidently messy, unideal, and pragmatic. It involves breaking the enemy's will to fight as much as it does killing their men and destroying their combat power. In war, we are up against the enemy's best and brightest, and they mean us harm. In war, we do not face an implacable force of nature which we can outsmart. We are not engaged in some limited arena defined by rules of engagement. Most of all, we are not trying to win the approval of a legal class which is taking control over our society's great institutions. In war, especially a war for survival against an enemy that can really defeat or destroy us, we must fight to defeat this existential threat. We must do whatever it takes to win. Victory is the only standard that matters, because only victory can give us a future where we survive in freedom. If, or more likely when, the Chinese communists launch a Pacific War, we will be taught this lesson anew if we survive to learn it. They will not hold back, will not be restrained, nor will they limit their actions to anything even remotely humane. They will likely employ nuclear weapons at the outset, as would the Soviets have done had they come across the Fulda Gap in the 1980s. They will likely attack far beyond Taiwan, targeting Japan, Guam, Hawaii, and the continental United States. China's People's Liberation Army serves the Chinese Communist Party, not the Chinese national government. It is a party militia with atomic assets. They abided the worst mass murders in the history of humankind, Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution. Thanks to foolish Western investments, they have been enriched to the point where they are ready to wage a general war to unseat the United States as global hegemon. Their allies in Russia, Iran, North Korea, Pakistan, Cuba, South Africa, and Venezuela will certainly join in at their first opportunity. Communists, Islamists, and other anti-Western elements will certainly act as a fifth column in support of their fight. Countless military agents led into the United States by the Biden administration will appear everywhere in the United States, destroying our power grid and infrastructure and sowing despair and distrust. If this nightmare manifests, the last thing that we want is a military brainwashed into the delusion of humanitarian laws of war. We will need leaders such as George S. Patton, William Tecumseh Sherman, and Robert E. Lee. We will need warriors capable of employing real darkness in order to serve the light. No United States forces should ever enter into armed conflict under any rules of engagement that vary from those used in Europe and the Pacific in 1945. Fully unrestrained, our military has a fighting chance to win the next war. Only this will bring us ongoing survival, and only the fear of such a terrifying thing can actually deter Chinese aggression. Thank you for listening. Good day.